I'm Daniel Minty, a cognitive behavioral therapist, teacher, and writer. Do you ever wonder why we're mean to each other? Or why we would choose to treat each other with loving kindness? Over the last decade, research on mice, which share much neurobiology with humans, has shed light on these questions. Observing Mickey and Minnie, it turns out, is another way of observing ourselves. In this video, we'll take a look at what mice are teaching us about our own aggression, empathy, altruism, and equanimity. It turns out the mouse genome is quite similar to our own. So too, the mouse immune, endocrine, nervous, and cardiovascular systems. Mice develop many diseases that affect humans, including cancer and diabetes, all of which makes mouse studies helpful in understanding our own illness and wellness. Mice also seem to experience emotions that drive behaviors in some very human ways. Let's take a look at a couple of these studies to learn what they might teach us about ourselves. Researchers at Vanderbilt University paired a male and female mouse, let's call them Mickey and Minnie, together in a little mouse house. The couple lived happily, eating and making love and doing all the other usual mouse activities. The researchers then removed Minnie and replaced her with a male we'll call Marcus. Mickey immediately attacked Marcus, boxing and biting him and exhibiting a range of other aggressive behaviors. Next, Marcus was put in a cage next door, and Mickey was taught that by poking a lever, he could again get access to Marcus. Mickey consistently poked the lever and went next door and beat up Marcus. Finally, researchers injected Mickey with a drug that suppresses dopamine. After the injection, Mickey showed much less interest in poking the lever and beating up Marcus. Researchers determined that dopamine receptors in Mickey's ventral striatum, a structure in the vertebrate brain that processes reward stimuli, were active agents in his choosing aggressive behavior or not. What does this study suggest? We've long known dopamine rewards behaviors, such as eating and sex. The Emory study supports the idea that dopamine also reinforces aggression. Aggression is exhibited by all vertebrates and seems a strategy to secure such resources as mates, territory, and food. Other studies have confirmed the ventral striatum as implicated in aggression and that dopamine is frequently involved. We can see how nature would select for aggression. If Mickey can run off all the other males from his neighborhood, it's more likely his aggressive genes will get passed along to the next generation. Vertebrates, for better and for worse, seem hardwired for aggression. Vertebrates appear to be hardwired for other traits as well. Empathy and altruistic behavior have been found to share neural substrates in many vertebrates. To determine the emotional state of another, an observer activates the same neural networks in his or her brain as those lighting up in that of the other, a response called the perception-action mechanism. fMRI studies confirm that observing the physical and emotional state of another activates the same brain networks in the observer. The anterior cingulate cortex is particularly implicated in the perception-action mechanism. The ACC contains pain-responsive neurons activated both by one's own suffering and that of others. In humans and in mice alike, this pain processing system includes the ACC, thalamus, and insular cortex. Mice have a well-delineated neural circuit linking the ACC and amygdala that appears critical for the processing of vicarious suffering. The organization of these circuits in rodents is quite similar to the cortical circuits involved in human processing of others' pain and emotional distress. The social hormone oxytocin enhances empathic responses in rodents, much the way it does in the human brain. And in mice, these responses are stronger when the suffering other is a sibling or a long-term mate. Nature then appears to select for empathy and altruism. Empathically witnessing another's suffering evokes something called emotional contagion, fear of the observed experience, which helps the observer avoid such dangers as predation or poisoning. Such empathic witnessing can also drive altruistic behavior, for instance, rescuing others. That has also been found to activate the brain's reward centers. Let's look at a couple of studies that have explored these phenomena. Researchers at the University of Chicago placed pairs of rats in pens. One rat was caged in the middle of the pen. The other was free to run about. Most rats liberated their peers by headbutting their cage doors to open them. Next, researchers placed rats in pens with two cages. In one, another rat was trapped. The other cage contained a pile of chocolate chips. The free-ranging rats could simply have eaten the chocolates. Instead, most chose to open both cages and share the chocolates with their newly freed compatriots. Many studies have found similar behavior in rodents. Researchers at the University of Tokyo discovered a pheromone in the tears of baby mice called ESP22. This substance makes female mice more likely to reject male sexual advances. Only baby mice produce it. ESP22 overrode sex pheromone signals from adult males that would normally have increased female libido. Mother mice exposed to ESP22 rejected male advances and attended to their babies instead. This choice likely benefits baby mice by reducing the number of siblings competing for resources. The choice also appears sufficiently rewarding to mothers who consistently direct their attention away from sex and toward their crying babies. Let's look at one final study in which rats teach us something about equanimity, including a way in which we can bring more of this into our own lives. Researchers at Emory University used a strobe light to operantly condition rats to reduce resting respiration from their usual 91 breaths per minute to 82 breaths. The rats were taught to avoid the noxious stimulus of the strobe by breathing more slowly. They were, in effect, trained to a technique yogis have practiced for millennia. Pranayama is the yogic term for a breathing pattern that induces change in the human body and mind. Yoga teaches that slow abdominal breathing produces a state of calm, non-reactive equanimity. Studies have shown pranayama lowers heart rate, blood pressure, and other biomarkers of human stress. Now, a skeptic might say, this is simply a placebo response. Yoga students are told they'll feel calmer if they practice pranayama, and so they do. Good question, and one that the Emory study addresses. Once the yogi rats had been reset to 82 breaths, they and a control group were exposed to a variety of environmental stressors. Compared to controls, yogi rats showed significantly less stress. Analysis of both their behavior and of stress-related changes in their central nervous systems indicated they were less reactive to stress than were the control animals. While human pranayama studies have found similar results, the Emory study provides evidence that, far from being a placebo, pranayama acts directly on the vertebrate central nervous system. Interestingly, and in line with human studies, pranayama did not affect yogi rats' levels of the stress neurotransmitter cortisol. It remained the same in both rat groups. While the vertebrate endocrine system seems to respond to stress in a constant way, an animal's experience of that stress can be significantly changed by the practice of pranayama. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it sheds some light on the aggression, empathy, altruism, and equanimity you experience in your own life and in the world around you. Below, I'll share some links to the studies I mentioned, should you want to take a look at them yourself. I also invite you to subscribe to this channel and to check out our weekly interactive webinar at www.allthingscbt.com.